My name is Naomi, and this lesbian story begins with a topic many couples avoid: money. This is an educational story about financial transparency in lesbian relationships and why unspoken money dynamics often create emotional distance long before any argument appears. When I met Sophie, we connected easily, emotionally, intellectually, values aligned, but one subject stayed carefully untouched: finances. At first, it felt polite, then it felt uncomfortable, and eventually, it became confusing. This story is educational because money is not just about numbers. It's about safety, autonomy, control, and vulnerability. Sophie earned more than I did. I paid attention to small things: who suggested restaurants, who paid without asking, who hesitated. Nothing dramatic happened, but imbalance quietly formed. One important lesson I learned is this: when finances are unclear, power dynamics fill the gap. I started minimizing my needs. She started making assumptions. Neither of us intended harm, but silence created it. In many WLW relationships, especially between women raised to avoid difficult conversations, money becomes emotional territory instead of practical logistics. This lesbian story is educational because love does not erase financial reality. Ignoring it only transfers stress into other areas: intimacy, decision-making, self-worth. Eventually, we had a calm, honest conversation, not about amounts, but about comfort. What spending meant to each of us, what independence meant, what generosity felt like, and where it crossed into pressure. That conversation didn't reduce romance, it increased trust. If you're listening and feeling uneasy around money in your relationship, ask yourself, do I feel safe expressing financial limits? Do I feel equal when decisions are made? Love thrives when transparency replaces assumption. This is where my story begins, not with conflict, but with learning that clarity is a form of care. After that conversation, something shifted between Sophie and me. Not because our incomes changed, but because our understanding did. This story is educational because financial clarity creates emotional stability. When money is named, it stops controlling the relationship from the background. We began making decisions together, not based on who earned more, but on what felt fair and respectful. Sometimes that meant splitting costs differently. Sometimes it meant choosing experiences that didn't create pressure for either of us. One important lesson I want to share is this: equality in relationships is not about identical contribution. It's about mutual consent and emotional comfort. We also talked about long-term expectations, savings, shared goals, what independence would look like if one of us needed support later. For many lesbian couples, financial conversations are complicated by social conditioning. Women are taught to prioritize harmony over clarity, but avoiding discomfort only postpones conflict. This lesbian story is educational because financial imbalance often appears as emotional imbalance. Resentment grows quietly. Gratitude becomes obligation. Affection becomes transactional. By talking openly, we remove those invisible pressures. Another key insight is this: generosity should feel empowering, not silencing. I learned to accept support without shrinking myself. Sophie learned to offer without assuming authority. Money stopped being a symbol of power. It became a shared responsibility. If you're building a relationship and hoping for longevity, consider this: transparency is not unromantic, it is protective. Love lasts longer when both partners feel financially respected. This story isn't about budgets or rules, it's about dignity. And in healthy lesbian relationships, dignity is not optional, it's foundational.